Buried in old trenches, covered by mud and time, lie machines that look like something out of a nightmare. Giant, rust-covered structures with twisted tracks and shapes so bizarre it's hard to believe they ever moved, let alone fought. What did the world's first tanks and armored vehicles really look like? What kind of wild ideas were put into action back when modern warfare was still in its infancy? Today, you're going to discover some of the strangest, most poorly designed, yet unbelievably real machines ever found abandoned since World War I. Some were so massive they sank into the mud before even reaching the battlefield. Others were so heavy they cracked their own frames. But every single one of them left a mark on history, even if it's now hidden under rust. Stick around until the end, because the last vehicle on this list is so bizarre, most people refuse to believe it ever existed. Renault FT17. In the chaos of trench warfare and the mud-choked battlefields of World War I, a small, compact machine emerged. It looked fragile, but it changed armored warfare forever. Introduced in 1917 by French manufacturer Renault, the FT17 went down in history as the first tank with a fully rotating turret, setting the standard for future designs. Powered by a 4-cylinder, 4.5-liter engine producing about 35 horsepower, its performance was modest. The top speed was just 4.3 miles per hour, but it wasn't built for speed. It was built to push forward, support infantry, and survive the brutal conditions of frontline combat. It had a manual transmission with 4 forward gears and 1 reverse, simple and efficient. Its spring-supported track system and full track drive gave it surprising traction in muddy, shell-torn terrain. Weighing around 6.5 tons, with a length of 16 feet and a height just over 6.5 feet, it was operated by only 2 crew members, a driver and a gunner. Inside, the space was tight, noisy, and boiling hot, but it got the job done with surprising reliability. The FT-17 was deployed in major battles across France and Italy, and even exported to countries like the United States and Japan. Its small size made it ideal for maneuvering through tight spaces where heavier tanks got bogged down. Today, it's seen as a historical milestone. Many surviving units are displayed in museums around the world. One was discovered abandoned in a Latvian forest, partially buried with its 2 crew members still inside, a chilling time capsule from the war. It was the beginning of it all. But what comes next is bigger, heavier, and built for destruction. Take Mark IV. Released in 1917 by the United Kingdom, the Mark IV was a massive leap forward in armored warfare. It became one of the most widely used tanks of the war, known not for its elegance, but for its brutality and battlefield presence. Its standard version was powered by a 6-cylinder Daimler engine, about 13 liters, generating 105 horsepower. Plenty for the time, considering it weighed nearly 28 tons. Its top speed? Just under 4 miles per hour. But again, speed wasn't the goal. It was designed to cross trenches, crush barbed wire, and roll over craters caused by heavy shelling. The manual 4-speed gearbox was hard to operate and required brute strength. The rigid suspension and full-track drive system wrapped around nearly the entire body, earning it the grim nickname Moving Coffin. Measuring around 26 feet long, it had a rhomboid shape and no turret. The interior was suffocating, filthy, and filled with the deafening roar of its engine. Up to 8 crew members operated in extremely cramped and sweltering conditions. The Mark IV played key roles in battles like Cambrai and the Somme, with male versions equipped with cannons and female variants armed with machine guns. Many were left behind after the war. Some were repurposed by locals during World War II as makeshift barricades. One was found partially buried near Arras, France, its side compartment still loaded with ammunition. It was loud, heavy, and unforgiving. But the next tank on our list had a design so strange, many soldiers didn't know what to make of it. Schneider CA1. Built in 1916 by French manufacturer Schneider CA, the CA1 was one of the earliest attempts to turn mobile artillery into an armored assault vehicle. Its mission was clear: cut through barbed wire, cross trenches, and pave the way for infantry. Powered by a 12-liter 4-cylinder engine producing 60 horsepower, It moved its 13-ton bulk at a top speed of just 5 miles per hour. The short-geared manual transmission required coordination and strength from the crew to keep it steady on uneven terrain. It had metal track propulsion and a fixed suspension, limiting its flexibility. One major flaw was its low nose, which frequently got caught on trench edges, leaving it vulnerable under enemy fire. At 20 feet long and around 7.5 feet high, it had a rectangular body with a forward extension resembling a beak, which earned it several nicknames among the troops. The cramped, poorly ventilated interior housed up to 6 crew members. The 11mm armor was only effective against light weapons. Its armament included a 75mm cannon on the right side and 2 Hotchkiss machine guns, creating an unbalanced load that made turning awkward. It was mainly used on French fronts, where it had more psychological than tactical impact. Many units were destroyed before reaching enemy lines, but the CA1 still played a role in the early push for armored warfare. Years later, a rusted CA1 chassis was found buried near an old railway line in northern France, its frontal armor still pierced by century-old shrapnel. More historic than effective, it was still a stepping stone. The next machine took size and ambition to the next level, at a cost. Chamond. Released in 1917 and built by Compagnie des Forges et Aciéries de la Marine et Haumacourt, the Chamond was one of France's boldest attempts at building a heavy frontline tank. Oversized, unbalanced, and with its main gun mounted awkwardly at the front, it quickly became one of the most controversial and bizarre armored vehicles of World War I. It used a Panhard 4-cylinder engine with around 13 liters, delivering 90 horsepower. That power pushed its 23 tons to a top speed of just 4.6 miles per hour. The manual 4-speed gearbox demanded constant attention from the crew to avoid breakdowns during operations. Its biggest design flaw was clear. The overhanging front, combined with tracks that were too short, made it extremely unstable. The tank often got stuck crossing trenches or uneven terrain. The rigid suspension only made things worse, leading to a rough and shaky ride. At nearly 30 feet long, its stretched-out rectangular body and nose-mounted 75mm cannon made steering difficult. Inside, up to 9 crew members worked in tight, hot, and noisy conditions. The 17mm front armor offered limited protection against small arms. The tank was also fitted with 4 Hotchkiss machine guns, providing decent firepower but poor flexibility. Most were deployed on French battlefields in 1917 and 1918 as mobile artillery support, but in practice, their performance was underwhelming. Many were abandoned after getting stuck or damaged in combat. One unit was found decades later in a forest in the Meuse region, buried under roots and soil, its cannons still mounted, frozen in time. The Chamond was a bold idea on paper, but war quickly exposed its flaws. Next up, we cross into German territory, where a tank built like a bunker took armored warfare to the extreme. A7V. In 1918, Germany introduced its answer to Allied tank dominance, the A7V. Built by Daimler-Benz. It was the only German tank mass-produced during World War I, and with its towering height and steel walls, it looked more like a mobile fortress than a tank. Powered by a 4-cylinder engine with nearly 20 liters of displacement, it generated around 100 horsepower. Despite weighing 33 tons, it could reach speeds of up to 9 miles per hour, impressive for a vehicle of its size. The manual 4-speed transmission required a well-trained crew to keep it operational. With side-mounted tracks and a rigid suspension, the A7V struggled on rough ground but performed well on flatter terrain. Inside, it housed an astonishing 18 crew members, drivers, gunners, mechanics, and more, all working shoulder to shoulder in intense heat, noise, and fumes. The A7V measured 24 feet long and nearly 10 feet tall, with armor thickness ranging from 6 to 30 millimeters, offering substantial protection. Its firepower included a 57mm front-mounted cannon and 6 MG-08 machine guns placed around the hull. The tank famously took part in the Battle of Villers-Bretonneux, marking one of the first known tank-on-tank battles in history. However, only 20 units were built and deployed before the war ended. One A7V was later found half-buried near Perron, with its frontal armor still dented from combat, and parts of its original tracks intact, now under restoration. And if you've enjoyed this deep dive into bizarre wartime machines so far, take a second to support the channel. hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notification. That way, you won't miss the next video, and you help us grow and keep bringing you stories like this. Get ready, because what's coming next flips everything upside down. The Fiat 2000. Designed in 1917 and completed in 1918, the Fiat 2000 was Italy's most ambitious tank project of the war. Massive, heavily armored, and surprisingly advanced, it was one of the most impressive tanks of its time, even though it arrived too late to see action in Europe. Its six-cylinder inline engine had 24 liters of displacement, delivering 240 horsepower. That kind of power moved its 88,000 pounds, about 40 metric tons, at up to 4.3 miles per hour. The manual transmission was reinforced to handle extreme stress during long hauls. With fixed suspension and wide tracks, the Fiat 2000 remained stable on flat terrain, but struggled in mud or steep inclines. Still, its balance and handling were superior to many of its peers. The tank measured 26 feet long and 13 feet wide, with a tall central rotating turret armed with a 65mm cannon. It also had up to 7 Fiat Revelli machine guns placed strategically around the hull for full coverage. Its 20mm armor provided solid defense against light and medium fire. Inside, it could hold up to 10 crew members, with decent space, mechanical ventilation, and surprisingly ergonomic controls for the time. Although it didn't see combat in Europe, the Fiat 2000 was deployed for testing in North Africa, where it faced extreme heat and rocky terrain. Performance was decent, but maintenance proved difficult in the field. Years later, one was found buried in sand at an old Italian base in Libya. Its turret still in place and much of its riveted structure intact. It was a true armored fortress. But what comes next is the complete opposite, a tank so thin and strange. It barely looked like it belonged on a battlefield. Skeleton tank. Few wartime vehicles draw as much attention for their appearance as the skeleton tank, one of the most unusual creations of World War I. Developed in 1918 in the United States by the Army Ordnance Department, it was an ambitious attempt to build a lightweight, cost-effective tank with the mobility to cross trenches with ease. The result? A metal skeleton that looked more like an unfinished structure than a weapon of war. It was powered by a Beaver 4-cylinder engine, delivering around 100 horsepower. Weighing just 9 tons, the skeleton tank was exceptionally light for its time. It reached a maximum speed of 5 miles per hour, enough to navigate through minefields and trench zones. Its 4-speed manual transmission was straightforward but demanded careful handling due to the tank's light, flexible frame. The tank ran on full-length metal tracks, supported by 2 central steel tubes forming a kind of elevated bridge between the treads. The basic suspension meant the entire vehicle shook easily over rough terrain. It measured about 25 feet long and nearly 10 feet high, with a narrow, exposed central body. A single .30 caliber Hotchkiss machine gun was mounted on top of a compact armored cab. The vehicle was operated by only 2 crew members, with very limited visibility and protection. Armor thickness was minimal, around 13 millimeters at best, barely enough to stop light gunfire. What made the skeleton tank unique was its ability to cross wide trenches thanks to its long, narrow design, which also reduced material costs and simplified construction. It was tested in the US, but never saw combat. Though promising on paper, the project was ultimately cancelled at the end of the war, and only a single prototype was ever built. That prototype was rediscovered decades later in an abandoned military depot in Virginia, disassembled but with its tubular steel structure still intact. Today, it's on display at a museum as one of the most eccentric engineering experiments of the era. It looked like something out of a fantasy, but it was absolutely real. And the next machine on our list takes excess to the extreme, with sheer size and ambition that went far beyond what technology at the time could handle. K-Wagen. The K-Wagen was Imperial Germany's most ambitious attempt at building a super-heavy tank during World War I. Developed between 1917 and 1918, it was designed to be a rolling bunker capable of smashing through enemy defenses with brute force. But its size would become its downfall. It used two Daimler six-cylinder engines, producing a combined 650 horsepower, necessary to move its colossal 120-ton weight. Despite that power, it could only reach 4.3 miles per hour and required constant adjustments to its manual transmission by a trained technical crew. Its wide twin tracks and reinforced frame allowed it to move straight through obstacles, but the rigid suspension made the ride extremely rough. It needed flat ground to operate effectively, or it risked sinking under its own weight. At 43 feet long, 20 feet wide, and nearly 10 feet tall, the K-Wagen was bigger than most homes at the time. It carried a crew of 27, including gunners, drivers, mechanics, and loaders. Inside, it was dark, cramped, and deafening, with poor communication between operators. The armor was 30 millimeters thick in exposed areas, offering solid protection. It was armed with 4 77mm guns and up to 7 machine guns mounted around the hull for maximum coverage. Only 2 prototypes were built, and neither made it to the battlefield before the war ended. One was dismantled at the factory, while the other remained in storage for years. Decades later, parts of a K-Wagen were discovered buried beneath concrete in what used to be an old military installation in East Prussia. They're now being studied by military historians. It was a beast the world wasn't ready for. But the next machine, it's the most alien-looking vehicle ever built for war, complete with wheels taller than a house. Tsar tank. Built in 1914 by Russian engineer Nikolai Lebedenko, the Tsar tank, also known as the Lebedenko tank, is one of the strangest war machines ever created. Towering over 30 feet tall, with 2 giant front wheels over 27 feet in diameter, it looked more like a carnival ride than a battlefield weapon. It was powered by 2 Maybach 4-cylinder engines, each producing 240 horsepower, for a total of 480 HP. But with an uneven weight distribution and total mass of around 60 tons, the tank could barely move. Its top speed was estimated at 10 miles per hour, though it never reached that in real tests. The manual transmission required independent operation for each engine, adding complexity. Its front wheels provided traction, while a small 5-foot rear wheel offered support. But with no suspension, the tank was incredibly unstable. It couldn't handle uneven terrain and easily got stuck. Measuring nearly 60 feet long, it had a crew of 4, with cannons and machine guns spread across the frame. The idea was to provide elevated firepower over trenches, but in practice, it was a mechanical disaster. Armor thickness was less than 10 millimeters in some areas, making it highly vulnerable. During testing outside Moscow, the rear wheels sank into soft ground, and the engines weren't strong enough to free it. The project was abandoned, and the Tsar tank was left in the exact spot it got stuck, rusting in the open for years before being dismantled in the late 1920s. Today, it remains a symbol of over-engineering and impractical ambition. And yet, it's not the weirdest vehicle on this list. That title belongs to our final machine, a walking disaster made of plates and gears. Boyrol machine. In 1915, French engineer Louis Boyrol unveiled one of the most jaw-dropping contraptions ever proposed for military use, the Boyrol machine. Built to clear trenches and minefields, it was part tank, part nightmare, and looked nothing like a combat vehicle. It was powered by a 6-cylinder engine, generating 80 horsepower, mounted in the center of a completely exposed metal frame, weighing around 30 tons. It moved at an agonizingly slow 1 mile per hour. Yes, just 1 mile per hour. The manual gearbox was unresponsive and clunky. The machine was made of giant, rotating metal plates connected in a continuous loop, functioning like rolling panels instead of standard tracks. With no suspension system, it stumbled over uneven terrain, struggling to stay balanced. It was 26 feet long and over 10 feet high, resembling a massive steel gate on treads. There was no turret, no meaningful armor, and the operator sat in a tiny cage surrounded by grinding gears and exposed shafts. It was so loud, soldiers could hear it from far away, and it moved so slowly that infantry could walk beside it with ease. Its armor was thin, barely enough to deflect small debris. While it was meant to crush barbed wire and cross trenches, real-world tests showed it could hardly move in a straight line. Still, the French military took it seriously enough to commission 2 versions, though neither saw service. One prototype was left in storage for decades, eventually rediscovered by historians in rusted, broken pieces. The boy-roll machine stands as one of the strangest and most impractical vehicles ever built for war. A bizarre monument to an era where imagination outpaced engineering. You've just seen 10 of the weirdest and most forgotten war machines of World War I. From bold innovations to mechanical disasters, each of these relics left behind more than rust. They told a story of human creativity pushed to the limits. These weren't just weapons. They were experiments in survival, desperation, and ambition in the middle of chaos. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these machines do you think was the most ridiculous? If you could restore one, which would it be? And which one surprised you the most for actually being real? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That helps the channel grow and tells YouTube that this kind of content matters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.